In this video, you and I are going to talk through the Scrum Guide. We're going to emphasize certain sections. We're going to talk through it. I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions to make you think. We're going to talk through war stories and the realities of implementation. Just kind of bring color and context to a beautiful document, a really well-founded kind of framework as we go through here, okay? So we all know who the founders are, right? Ken Schwaber and Jeff Sutherland. All the credit goes to them. Those guys, those men really set something amazing to the world, right? They really gave us something great. And this is called the Scrum Guide, right? The definitive guide to Scrum, the rules of the game. And I kind of don't want to read too much into it, but rules of the game. It's kind of giving you the ways in which to operate. It's not being super precise and those kind of things. So it's not like a cookie cutter follow methodology for a purpose. And we'll talk about the reason why it's not that, right? Because it's trying to drive the decision-making and the collaboration and adaptation down to the lowest possible level so that a team, Agile team, can all work together. So think of it as a game, an experiment we're going into the forest or the fog together as a team. We know there's value there. We're trying to deliver it every little step of the game. So let's keep it fun. Let's keep it interactive. Let's keep it positive. That's what I take from it, okay? And this is the most recent version, 2020, often comes out with a new version every once in a while. And every time they come out with a new version, it's tighter. It's more concise. It's clearer. They're making it better. It's not getting bloated and overhead and blech. No, it's getting tight. I love it, man. So they said they developed Scrum in the early 1990s, not a long time ago, right? And they wrote their first version of the Scrum Guide in 2010. So they were in the sausage making for a long time, testing and building, taking from established norms and established disciplines and thoughts and bringing it all together in something that was actually producing value in tumultuous organizations, the kind that we work with, right? So this is proven. This is not theory. This is from the fire is what we need to understand. And while it came from the IT and software world, it's expanded, right? They say, hey, we are humbled to see Scrum being adopted in many domains, okay? Anywhere we got complex work. Now, it did come from software. That's where the roots were, but it spread. And one of the things we want you to know, or they want you to know off the back, is anybody who is doing work, okay, is called a developer, all right? So if you think about all the different components, all the different people that are doing work in your projects, the name, as we synonymously discuss it, will be developer, okay? So that's as we go in there, all right? So let's get into the game. And they say, right at the bat, definition of Scrum. Now, you want to be able to explain Scrum to other people. Let's go back to see how they nail it down. They say that Scrum is a lightweight framework. We'll talk about what that means. How does it help? That helps people, teams, and organizations generate value through adaptive solutions to complex problems. So if you threw that definition in people's faces, they might get it, and it's really clear if you break it down. But what they're really saying is it's a lightweight framework. We are not overwhelming you with all these bells and whistles and unneeded things and etc. We are cutting it down to the core. What exactly do we need to help our teams, to help our people, to help our organization produce something great in the toughest of all scenarios? So it's essentially, we're cutting away everything that doesn't matter to leave the value, okay? And to help our teams produce value. That's the goal. And they say, if you think about it, Scrum's a way of operating that puts a lot of power into the team's hands, right? Because that's where the value is generated. And to help build that understanding and that philosophy and that, adherence to the way in which Scrum operates, you need a Scrum Master. You got to foster the environment as we jump out there. I like that. The Scrum Master's there to foster the environment, right? And then here, they say the product owner orders the work for the complex problem in the product backlog. The Scrum team turns it into an increment, and the Scrum team inspect the results. That's clear. And they say right off the bat, look at this little section right here. Let me switch to a color. That is, they're saying, boom, right off the bat, in a nutshell. I like that. First of all, they led with the words in a nutshell. It's, colloquial, if that's the right term. It's just simple. It breaks it down. So be that way when you think about Scrum, okay? They say, hey, It fosters an environment where the product owner orders the work for a complex problem into a backlog. So they're saying, boom, this is one of the artifacts, product backlog. The product owner is organizing it. That's really important, okay? And then the Scrum team turns a chunk of that work, a selection of the work, into an increment of value during a sprint. The Scrum team and its stakeholders inspect the results and adjust it, okay? Now, this is the crux of what happens. And then they say, repeat. So we go back and we do it again. It's an iterative process, right? Incremental and iterative as we go through there. That's what's happening. Make a list of everything we want, order it, break it down so that it's ready. Get the team to take a chunk of it, make value in there, inspect it, adapt it, repeat, right? As quickly as humanly possible. That's what we're trying to do over and over and over again. They did that beautifully said as I start to erase the screen. Now, as they break this down, what do they say? Scrum is simple, right? And here is an important thing, okay? Now, try it as is and determine if its philosophy, theory, structure can help to achieve the goals and create value. They're basically saying, like, follow it. Don't start doing this Scrum but thing, right? Don't go, oh yeah, we do Scrum but something else. No, dude, follow the guidelines. Follow the framework, okay? They say the framework is purposely incomplete. It only defines the parts required to implement Scrum theory. So they are not overwhelming it. Like I said, with all these bells and whistles, they're telling you exactly what matters. So don't throw it away. Don't change it. Don't do any of that stuff, all right? It's saying Scrum is built upon the collective intelligence of the people using it. Your team, right? You're trying to get the most out of your team. That's what it's saying. And they said, rather than provided people with detailed instructions, the rules of the Scrum guide their relationships and interactions. That, let's circle that right there. Okay, that is key. Instead of just telling them, you do this, you're a robot, you do that, etc. No, the Scrum guide, what we're learning, guides the relationships and the interactions. And by helping guide the way they interact, the way they work, you allow the genius of the individuals to produce the best solutions through an iterative process. That's the goal, okay? All right, so, and then they say there's tons of different practices, okay? That's good. We want to use the other practices, specifics, you know, like we could do pair programming, we could use cumulative flow diagrams. They're saying like, yeah, those are valuable, but don't lose the essence of Scrum is what they're getting at, all right? So, what do they say Scrum's based on? Now, Scrum is driven, what they say, from empiricism and lean thinking. Now, what's empiricism? That means that you're just learning from facts, from logic, from things that have actually happened, okay? That's a good way to be. So it's not theory, it's, yo, let's prove it, right? Empiricism asserts that knowledge comes from experience and making decisions based on what's observed, right? What does the data tell us? What do the facts? What do the defects tell us? What does the customer's response tell us? That's what we're trying to learn, right? And then if we think about lean thinking, and Mr. Sutherland is definitely influenced by lean thinking, as am I, as you should be as well, eliminating waste, driving flow, servant leadership, understanding the work. Those are the things that are core, right? Taiichi Ono, go look up that dude. He's a killer, all right? Influencing Mr. Sutherland, influencing Scrum. That's what we want to think about from a lean perspective, okay? And we say Scrum employs an iterative, incremental approach, all right? Now, the iterative means we chunk it up. Incremental means we're getting better and better and better and better and better every chunk, in a sense. That's what we're doing. So it does both of those things. So you get, you know, chocolate and vanilla. Ain't that cool, right? All right. And so as we go in there, and then here's what I like. Scrum engages groups of people who collectively have all the skills and expertise to do the work and share, you know, to do it. Okay. So as we think about our team, we hear a lot about like T-shaped people, I-shaped people. Basically what we're saying is, have we defined what we need to do in the next sprint? Do we have the right skills? Do we have the right people? What do we need to do to get them up there? Makes sense, right? There we go. And they say Scrum combines 4 formal events for inspection and adaptation, because there's no need, when they talk about inspection and adaptation, we'll go deeper, to say build, then find out later you're way off center, right? You're way off what you need to be. Don't do that. They're saying we're going to use all these events, the 4 major events, to inspect and adapt. How are we doing? How are we doing? How are we doing? How are we doing? What are we learning? What are we learning? What are we learning? And we tweak it. The little micro tweaks keep us from having to make massive changes at the end. If you think about turning a giant, aircraft carrier, if you're way off center, ginormous change. If you got to do course corrections and those things, we can do that as we go. Let's do the course corrections. That's what we're trying to do. And they say there are 3 pillars. If I were to draw like pillar number 1, 2, 3, the 3 pillars are transparency, inspection, and adaptation, TIA. And we're going to talk about what that means, okay? So right off the bat, transparency. Now, we need to just be an open book in Scrum, okay? That's what I take from it. If we are scared, because like some of the values, courage, right, is one of the key values. If we're scared and we hide the fact that we don't know how to do something, we hide the fact that we don't understand it, hide the fact that we think that we're scared of talking to the customer. If we're not transparent about what we're doing, how it's working, and what we can do better, it's going to hold us back from progress. And that ain't good, because we're trying to make incremental and iterative improvements, okay? So transparency is the emergent process, and work must be visible to those who perform the work, as well as receiving the work. Meaning, why would we hide the backlog? This is what we got here. Here's the order that we think it is. Here's the condition that it's currently in. Ain't nothing to hide from it, okay? Here's what's underway. Here's the progress. Here's the status. If you have a problem, raise your hand. Get involved. Let's just be honest. And then at the end, here's what we finished. Here's what we got done. Look at it. Tell us it sucks. Tell us you love it. Tell us something. Transparency is what we want, right? And so, as we go through here, it says, with Scrum, important decisions are made on the perceived state of the 3 formal artifacts. We're going to learn about the artifacts, okay? Artifacts that have low transparency, meaning if we hide our backlog, if we hide our sprint backlog, if we hide our increments, if we don't show them, if we're scared, then we're not going to learn what we need to learn. And we're not going to adjust when we need to adjust. We're just going to be worse than we could possibly be. And that isn't good. They say it diminishes value and increases risks. Yeah, we're not going to be able to get the goodness out there. Progress hurts because it ain't always straight line, right? That's the way it goes. And risk, if we're not willing to deal with the pain now, we're damn sure we'll deal with it later, and it's going to hurt a lot worse when the problem has metastasized and gone deeper, okay? So, this kind of seems like a riddle, but it's really clear. Transparency enables inspection. I'll say it again. Transparency enables inspection. Why is that true? Think about it. Transparency enables inspection. Well, if you put it on the table, you can look at it, right? And you can inspect. This is what we said we'd do. This is what we did. This is the problem we said we'd solve. Here's how we solved it. Did it work? If you're transparent, you can look at it. You can put it on the table. That's the way it goes, okay? Inspection without transparency is misleading and wasteful. Why would, if you hold your card, I'll show you a little bit. That's a waste of time, bro. Show the cards. That's the only way we're going to get better. All right, so that's transparency. Inspection. That's the next one, the next foundation. Inspection. What does inspection mean to you? Now, inspection to me, coming from a quality background, means we see the parts, look at the parts, inspect the parts. Do they meet the specifications? All those things. So it's kind of like that, right? It's kind of like going out there and seeing the reality and reflecting on it. Does it meet a standard? Does it solve a problem, etc.? So the Scrum artifacts, the things that represent value and progress, and the progress toward the agreed upon goals must be inspected frequently. We can't just let it. It's lazy. It's not as honest. It's not as courageous. We've got to inspect as we go. That doesn't mean micromanaging. It means let's just look. Is it working? Is it working? Let's get something out. Let's get something out. Let's get something out. Let's go. All right. So that's what we want to do. It says must be inspected frequently and diligently, not in an offhand way, to detect potentially undesirable variances or problems. We might as well just figure out where the problems are. A lot of times we have to build something a little bit to see where the issues are. We can only project so much, but when we build it, sometimes the problems just slap us in the face. And a lot of times when we solve a problem by implementing a feature or doing something else, it's only then do we realize that we have another problem. And that's not a bad thing. I've talked about this before. Sometimes we realize we have a problem. It's like, oh gosh, now we realize the bigger problem is this, and we can solve that, and we can solve something else. You want to find those problems through solutions, okay? Now, when they talk about the events, they say we have a cadence. Okay, boom, ba-doom, ba-doom, ba-doom. Some people who are naysayers will say like these cadences are not useful. I disagree 100,000 billion%. It's the cadence that helps us know like, hey, yo, I got to review tomorrow. I got to get something done by tomorrow. That's just how the human brain works. We've got to get it done. We have to set a deadline, and then we got to talk about it. Otherwise, we'll kick the can, kick the can, kick the can. That's not good, okay? Now, to go back to another thing like this, let's nail down. They said we're talking about inspection. Inspection enables adaptation. So originally said transparency enables inspection. I'll erase all this other stuff to keep it clear in your brain. Let's look at these things. And I will use the color of red. Okay, transparency enables inspection. Put your cards on the table. It's easy to look at your cards. Great. Inspection enables adaptation. By looking at the stuff, the cards on the table, oh, that's not solving the problem the way it is. Oh, that is awesome. It is solving the problem. And now I realize that. If you see it and you inspect it, then you can go, what do we need to change, add, adjust, whatever. So transparency enables inspection. Put your cards on the table, you can look at them. Once you look at your cards, then you can realize, oh, we need to change the cards or we need to do whatever. So inspection enables adaptation. That's what we need to do. And then they come on, they hammer it down, bro. They chose their words precisely, and I love them for it. Inspection without adaptation is considered pointless, okay? Inspection, if you're gonna look at it, be critical in a great way. Having the North Star being customer value driving, reflecting on how that serves. If you're just gonna look at it, don't just go, oh, it looks fine. In what mind, right? Versus what goal? The product goal, the sprint goal, the customer, like look at it per the goal. So inspection without adaptation is pointless. Scrum events are designed to provoke change. I've been talking a lot. I'm gonna get some water, bro. If you need to, you do to it or as well, okay? So that's how we roll. Just keep it rolling. All right, sweet. So we've called transparency and inspection. Let's talk about adaptation. So transparency, visualizing. Inspection, looking at how it's doing versus standard or what we expected. Adaptation is, what are we going to do now, right? If any aspects of the process deviate outside acceptable limits, and it doesn't have to be statistical process control where we have clear process, standards or limits. It can just be what we expect, right? Like we can adapt at that point. The materials being produced must be adapted or adjusted, what they say, okay? Adjusted must be made as soon as possible to minimize further deviations. It means if we find out that there's something wrong or something off of what we thought, why would we wait till tomorrow to change it? Let's change it today. Now, if we think about Scrum from the perspective of it's your money, this all makes perfect sense. I want to see what you're working on. I want to see what we're producing, what value is, what's ranked. I want to inspect it in the eyes of the customer, in the eyes of progress. And I want to go, dude, if it ain't working, let's change it. We ain't throwing the baby out with the bathwater and just going this way, that way, and this way. We are tweaking it to get there, right? So it makes sense. Now, adaptation becomes more difficult when people involved are not empowered or self-managing, meaning command and control makes things more difficult because they're not going to feel comfortable. They're not going to have the courage and the ability to change. So we need to drive the decision-making and the management down to what I'll call the lowest possible level, the developer level. Now, I don't mean like they're lower than you. That's not correct. It's their role is different than yours as a Scrum Master or product owner. Maybe you're a developer, whatever. And so like, it's just different. Like you drive it to the lowest possible level in the positive sense so that the people driving change can manage change, if you will, okay? I like this line. I'm going to go with the red color. Okay. A Scrum team is expected to adapt the moment it learns anything through inspection. So that's kind of a philosophy and a way we operate thing. Hey, we as a Scrum team, we are supposed to adapt things. We welcome change even late in the process of development, right? The moment we learn something new through inspection. So if everybody believes that and breathes that, just think about how that would change your projects, the way you go about stuff. That's awesome. Now, as we lay this out, we're going to go through what they call the 5 Scrum values. And we've heard Jeff Sutherland explain them, and he's going to do a heck of a lot better job than me. But I'm going to take a swing at it as we go through here, okay? And so right off the bat, They said the successful use of Scrum depends on people becoming more proficient and living the 5 values. So what are the 5 values? Commitment, focus, openness, respect, and courage. The first couple times you read it and you think about it, they're just going to kind of shoom, 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 go all past your head. But as you think about each one of them, they really matter and they all complement each other. So we're going to nail them down, okay? So Scrum team commits to achieving its goal and supporting each other. Love it. Their primary focus is on the work of the sprint to make the best possible progress toward the goal. These 5 values support that, okay? Now, this just doubles down. The Scrum team and its stakeholders are open about the work and the challenges as we go through there. And so as we do those things, the Scrum team members respect each other to be capable, independent, and are respected by as such by the people whom they work with. That's a tongue twister, but it's really valuable, okay? So we're going to have to empower people. We're going to have to respect them. We're going to have to allow them to take chances. And we're going to have to empower them to say, yo, when you have problems, reach out to us. Those are the kind of things. And then they say, here's where we kind of pinches on what do you believe about humans and the teams that you set up. Scrum team members have the courage to do the right thing, to work on tough problems. Now, if your team doesn't have the courage to do the right thing, it may be the individual, but I would not recommend going, you are not the right kind of person for our team. It may be that you haven't set up the environment the right way. Who would, it's possible, right? So that's what we kind of want to look at ourselves. Do our team members have the courage? Now, if you realize, man, they don't currently, can't just quit. Every one of us has to guide our teams through this evolution. And it's a constant challenge, but that's the purpose. We just want to look at it and say, do I have a courageous team, right? As we look at that first value on the back end, are they courageous in the way they act? Am I courageous in the way I act? All those things, think about it, evaluate yourself and just get better. And don't kid yourself. It won't help you, right? Okay. So these values give direction to the team with regard to their work, actions, and behavior. It's like the values underpin everything. That's really important, okay? It says the decisions that are made, the steps taken, and the way Scrum is used reinforces these values. So can't just say these are our values without living them. Makes sense, right? That's what values are all about. If they really mean something, they have to manifest themselves in the way you operate, okay? And so the Scrum team members learn and explore the values as they work through Scrum events and artifacts. So as a Scrum master, as a product owner, as a developer, or whatever, you want to emphasize these things. Oh man, in the retro. This is one of those things where I think that Scrum value of openness is really going there. I'm going to be vulnerable here. I'm going to say the way I was scared. I didn't want to tell people, blah, 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 whatever it is. So find opportunities to connect the way things are operating to these values in a positive way. And it could be a bump in the road, but you're leaning into the positive side of it, right? When these values are embodied by the Scrum team and the people they work with, the empirical Scrum pillars of transparency, inspection, and adaptation come to life. So there's magic that Mr. Sutherland, Jeff Sutherland, talks about in Scrum. It's that when these values set the soil, right? It sets the conditions. And when you're transparent, you inspect, you adapt through the events and the artifacts. It's like people just look at the work different. They look at each other different. They look at the possibilities different. And it really starts to take root and grow. So don't just, a lot of times when we start, it's all about the events and the artifacts and the roles and all that jazz. Yes, important, lightweight framework. But don't sleep on the values and the pillars. That's super important because without that, crashes.